Okay, we are live. Hey everyone, welcome in. Welcome to our November Pet Q&A. I know none of you have seen me before, but my name is Jordan. I'm the customer service manager at Real Mushrooms. I also run things behind the scenes for the Pet Q&As. So if you're wondering who's controlling the questions and all that kind of stuff, and if you ever hear Joni and Rob asking for Jordan, it's me. I'm behind the scenes. So I just wanted to say hi and thank you for tuning in. And this week, we're going to be talking about mushrooms and your pet's gut health. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Dr. Silver. Thanks, guys.
And I just wanted to say that we could not do this without Jordan. We're incredibly appreciative of all of her fine skills and everything she does. So
yeah, also known as Oz, the man, the woman behind the curtain,
right.
that does everything.
Yeah. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about gut health, and really, it's probably the most important system in the body to be healthy, because all life springs from the digestive system, from our ability to convert food into energy and usable nutrients. And to not to be too trite, but you are what you eat. You really are what you eat. But you also are what your digestive system keeps out, because they say that, because in the lifetime of a human, or I don't have a figure for a dog, you're probably going to be eating, 175 to 100 tons of food. And in that much food, there's going to be toxins. There's going to be things that aren't nutritious, things you don't want to eat. But somehow, our bowel, our gut, the wall of the lining of our bowel is so smart. It has this innate intelligence that it knows how to keep out the bad stuff and let in the good stuff. But when there are problems with the gut, it loses its ability to discriminate, and oftentimes we get things leaking through that barrier system that the gut has developed into the circulation. So, for instance, if you're eating a food that has a protein in it, and some of the protein leaks through the gut wall, it might stimulate an allergic reaction. So we call this condition where things leak through the gut, appropriately, leaky gut. So I just wanted to bring that up because that's really important to what we're about to talk about, because the bowel also has its own mechanisms of repair. It has in it a huge number of microorganisms. We call this the microbiome. There are hundreds upon hundreds of different species of bacteria, protozoa, fungi, and yeast, many of which are beneficial. But when things get bad down there, oftentimes we see bad bugs overpowering the good bugs, which also means that the gut can't repair this leakiness. So if you've got a pet that has allergies, it could be that the allergies get worse when it eats certain kinds of foods. We talk about food allergies, but it's much more complicated than that. So what does all this have to do with mushrooms? Well, mushrooms contain, if you've ever eaten a real live mushroom, like you eat a little white button mushroom and you chew on it, it's a little slimy. I mean, first of all, you have to cook it, but when you chew on it, it's a little slimy. And that slime is actually not really slime. That slimy feeling is key. I don't want this too. Please eat your mushrooms. But that slimy kind of feeling is actually a function of the fiber in the mushroom. It's a part of the fiber that's called chitin. And if you're aware of glucosamine, we commercially extract glucosamine from chitin, but the chitin comes usually from crustacean shells like crabs and lobsters and shrimp, and maybe commercially they're not even using that. They're using yeast as a way of growing the chitin. Anyway, so that sliminess of chitin is this glucosamine, and glucosamine, in addition to lubricating and helping the joints, actually also can help to repair that damaged bowel wall. So that's one way in which mushrooms can help your gut health And certainly when you have problems like allergies, can help with that. But another way that the fiber in the mushroom helps the bowel is it's food. It's food for the microbiome. And it turns out that it's not food for the bad bugs, it's food for the good bugs. So eat your mushrooms because they're going to benefit just because of the fiber that they have in them. And that's not mentioning some of the other things that mushrooms have in them, like let's say the beta glucans. Beta glucans are these complex, indigestible fiber molecules, which will actually signal immune cells in our gut to become more balanced, to do their job better, not to do their job more. Because when immune cells do their job more, then we get problems like allergies or autoimmune disease. We want the immune cells to do their job right. We don't want them to be asleep on the job, and we don't want them to be so vigilant that everything gets tagged by the immune system as being bad. So the beta glucans and the value of the fiber from the mushrooms in helping to grow good bugs and helping to support the bowel barrier wall is a very potent triad of important functions that the mushrooms have for the gut. Joni, would you like to add anything?
Actually, that was such a great description of mushrooms and the gut. And I have to confess something. I never made that connection between glucosamine and chitin. So thank you so much for explaining that. It makes total sense. One thing I do want to add is that there are certain mushrooms that have more of an affinity for the gut.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, lion's mane and chaga.
That's true. And
Yeah.
shiitake.
And shiitake.
And maitake. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they do all of the things that you're describing, plus they kind of like a little more focus on the gut health. For instance, lion's mane being supportive traditionally for irritable bowel disease, ulcers, etc. And then chaga also, being very, very important for digestive health. I'm discovering that personally, actually, as a human. I just started taking chaga, and I've noticed how much it's benefited my digestion just within the first 2 weeks.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Nice. So the type of glucosamine that we find in chitin is not the same glucosamine that we use for the joints. It's a modification of it. It's called N-Acetyl Glucosamine. We abbreviate that by NAG. And in one of my protocols that I use for my patients who have problems with their bowel, inflammatory bowel disease, colitis, these kinds of things, usually it has to do with leaky gut. And so I give them a purified N-Acetyl Glucosamine as part of my total protocol for them. And it really helps a lot. Now that I understand that mushrooms can be a natural source for that and can be part of our daily diet, can be part of your dog's daily diet, I'm really a proponent of that aspect of mushrooms as well.
Giving it in a whole food form as the mushroom product, or as cooking with mushrooms.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I think that's been a great overview of animal gut health and our gut health. And what do you think? Should we move into some questions? We've actually got some people that have showed up. Hello, everybody. And we're going to start with Kirsty, who says, we got told not to give dogs mushrooms, which is sad because I eat loads of them and they always want some. So that actually ties into talking about cooking with mushrooms. Yeah.
I'd like to apologize for all of the veterinarians out there who give advice that they don't really think about what they're saying. Veterinarians also will tell you not to feed anything else but that very plain and bland and nutritionless kibble. Veterinarians think of mushrooms as toxic. And this is because so many dogs will go out in the backyard after a rainfall, eat some bad mushrooms, get real sick, and then go to the vet. So that's what the vet sees. He sees these dogs, sick on the mushrooms. Just like when we talk about CBD and cannabis, all that vets know about that are these dogs coming in that have had THC and they're all gorked out, you know? So the reality is that if a mushroom is safe for a human to eat, it's safe for your dog to eat. Cook them. You must cook your mushrooms in order to release the good stuff that's in them, in order to make the fiber more available for your gut to use it and get healthy. But you know, I'm sorry that that kind of advice is out there because it really has no basis in the truth.
Yeah, no, true. And just in a little bit in defense, I mean, of course, you're a vet, and in defense of the vets that are, they're trying not to do harm. They're working with what they're working with what they've learned, whether it's with the food that they've been taught in vet school to feed, or with their, the limited experience. Although more and more vets are learning about mushrooms, but they're working within the capacity of what they've seen and what they've been told. The good news is Dr. Silver and I just did 3 back-to-back veterinary conventions where it was overwhelming the number of veterinarians that had an interest in mushrooms. So would you agree, Dr. Silver, that in the next, within the next year, we're going to see more vets using mushrooms in practice and supporting the use of mushrooms in practice? It's already happening in veterinary oncology, but I think it's going to happen more in the general practice as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been very, very happy about how interested my folks are, in mushrooms, and I'm doing everything I can to teach them that you should recommend giving mushrooms if you're having them in your meal as well. I would like to say one thing about cooking mushrooms for your pet. And dogs are, if you've ever watched a dog eat, they don't chew. They kind of inhale the food. And so these mushrooms, the really fibrous nature of these mushrooms, if they're not being chewed, potentially could pass through the bowel undigested and not do any good. So my suggestion is to dice them up really small. This way, they're more digestible. The digestive system is more likely, doesn't have to break down a big old piece of mushroom. It just has to break down a little piece. So, section them and dice them and make them into little cubes before you cook them. And I think that will improve the absorption of the goodies for your dogs.
That's a great idea, Doc Silver. And also, so many people are starting to, whether home cook for their dogs or, prepare raw food for their dogs, cook the mushrooms, and then make it, make a week's worth or something. So you can chop the mushrooms up, cook them, and then mix them, into a blend or something like that. If that's how you're doing your cooking. Boy, we've got a lot of people that have joined us. This is wonderful. And hi, Kim from Natural Pet Essentials, best pet store in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Okay, cool. Is that where you gave that talk that day?
I did.
Oh,
and
nice.
It's wonderful. She's absolutely lovely. Her team is fantastic. Excellent store. So happy you're here. Janelle, welcome. Thank you for giving our mushrooms a high five. Oh, this is a great question. Lisa is asking about the stearic acid in the capsules. Is it dangerous? This is a fantastic question.
Stearic acid is not dangerous, although there are some folks out there that are spreading misinformation about it. And a lot of this comes from companies that have decided to take the stearic acid, that are trying to show their products being better than another product by putting stearic acid down. But stearic acid is a naturally occurring fatty acid. It's found in foods. And the why it's used in those capsules is in order, if you're trying to stuff, a lot of, powdered mushroom into this capsule, it needs to have what we call a flow agent, which is something that is a little bit slippery to allow that powder to get well packed into that capsule. So we can guarantee you that each capsule has the same amount. It's really not a problem. If it's a problem for you, in spite of what I say, which is fine, then I would suggest going to the powdered products that we sell, which are not in capsules, which have no stearic acid in them, or our soft chews, which have no stearic acid in them.
Yeah. And thank you, Dr. Silver. And I really appreciated how you educated me about this, because I started getting these questions. And one of the things that really struck me was there's I think a clinical study, there's a study out there or something about stearic acid, but they were using massive doses of it.
Sure.
Yeah, and it's nowhere near the amount of stearic acid that would be in a
Yeah.
capsule.
I mean, even water, even oxygen are toxic at high dosages.
Yeah. So no, we wouldn't put something in our product that was toxic in any way.
Yes.
So no, they are not. It's not dangerous. Sue has a question. Does the mushroom immune product or lion's mane product interfere with Galliprant, which is an NSAID, a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory?
It does not. You should have no problems with that.
Yeah. They should actually I've always wondered, like, because of the lion's mane and its support for the gut, if it actually might be beneficial to combine to give lion's mane when you're taking an NSAID. I don't know about that. Is that, it can't hurt. It could actually be beneficial.
Yeah, possibly. I haven't read anything about mushrooms improving absorption, but it's possible.
Okay. Kelly's asking, I have a dog with epilepsy. What remedy is best for her?
Okay. Now, first of all, I forgot to say my little disclaimer here, which is that it's really not appropriate for me to give specific medical advice to you about a specific animal in this context. To really have to have what we call a doctor-patient relationship, where I examine your dog or we set up certain parameters around a telemedicine type of an interview. And I do encourage you to talk to your veterinarian about the epilepsy. You probably have, but there are many times where the best way to treat epilepsy is with a drug, because the epilepsy can be so severe and debilitating and potentially life-threatening. That being said, mushrooms can have a benefit in terms of helping things calm down up here. We've got reishi, we've got lion's mane that can help quite a bit. They reduce inflammation up here as well, because many of those molecules will cross the blood-brain barrier. And we know that one of the driving forces for epilepsy is some focus of inflammation in the brain that causes electrical signals to go awry, as you can see when your dog is having the seizure. But to say that there's specifically a mushroom that you should use that would be the only thing that you would use to treat epilepsy would be doing you a disservice, and especially doing your dog a disservice. That's not the topic tonight. Cannabis and CBD are not the topic, but there's a great deal of evidence that CBD can be helpful for many types of seizures in dogs, especially the less severe types. And it may take a fairly higher dose than you're used to giving, and you need to figure out the weight of the animal and how much CBD is in the product, or CBD and CBG, and then figure out that dosage. So if you're able to do that, the dosage for epilepsy begins at about 0.5 milligram per pound twice daily. You would give that with some food. It helps to improve.
Rob, I don't know if Rob froze on everybody else, but he's frozen on my screen. Okay, well, while Rob is frozen there, we're going to come back to that. I will say, Kelly, regarding epilepsy, just anecdotally, I was very excited about mushrooms for epilepsy, but I haven't really gotten any feedback about dogs that have been on the mushrooms that have had a very significant benefit with epilepsy. And I have, in my veterinary career, heard some pretty amazing feedback about CBD for dogs. So, like Doc Rob was saying, we'd be doing a disservice to you to tell you to just use a mushroom for epilepsy. I would say definitely like lion's mane or tremella, even reishi could be a great supportive mushroom, possibly along with CBD. But certainly talk to your vet, and often these dogs need to be on meds. So while we're waiting for, I think Rob Lefton is probably trying to get back in. We have somebody saying, not a question, but a comment, that I helped educate somebody online today who was using a mushroom product that was a mycelium product and not the body of the mushroom. And I have Joni to thank for educating me on that. Well, thank you. And I don't know who you are because you're just coming up as Facebook user, but yeah, I'm so glad that you were able to educate somebody on that. And for those out there that don't know what we're talking about here, there's 3 parts to a fungus. So, a fungal organism consists of the mycelium, which is it's not the roots. It's a whole different, mushrooms and plants they're in 2 separate kingdoms. But I guess you can compare the mycelium to they would be like the roots of a tree or roots of a plant. It's the underground structure of the fungus. And then there's the spore, which is the reproductive part of the mushroom. And then there's the part of the mushroom that comes up above ground. It's often called the fruiting body, but that's actually the mushroom. And that's the only part of the fungus that's actually a mushroom. And our company, we work with the mushrooms. Many other companies work with the mycelium products. And I don't want to go into too much detail on this live about that. But what I will say is that there's a lot of benefits to both. And the issue with the mycelium is that it's grown usually in oats or rice. And there's really no way to separate the mycelium from the oats or the rice that it's grown in. So often it's that what's called substrate that the mycelium is growing in is kind of ground up into a powder and encapsulated. And again, I'm not saying that product is bad. What I am saying is that it's not a mushroom. It's mycelium. The mushroom is just the part on the top. And if you want to learn more about myceliated products, I recommend kind of reaching out to those those companies that use mycelium. And you can read. I'm sure they have lots of educational material on the benefits of the mycelium product. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next one, Sue Wilkeson, who says, I have a dog with dementia. Can I help her? Sue, I'm so glad that you're on this Facebook Live today. And I'm glad that this is actually a question that I can answer while we're waiting for Dr. Silver to come back. Because I just spoke about this in September. I spoke at the American Holistic Veterinary Medical Association at their annual meeting on just this topic on canine cognitive dysfunction, also called doggy dementia. And what I talked about the benefits of a mushroom called lion's mane, also called Hericium erinaceus. And I have to say, and I've said this many times on this live Q&A, that this was my gateway mushroom. Before 2020, I didn't know anything about mushrooms, and now I've basically turned my entire life around. I work for real mushrooms. I'm working for a mushroom company. I've moved to Virginia and bought 5 acres so that I could go mushroom hunting on my wooded property. I'm really all about the mushrooms, and it's because of this lion's mane, and it's because of the feedback I got from veterinarians I was working with about lion's mane and its benefits for dogs with dementia. And while we're waiting for Rob, I'll just tell the story a little bit. I was working for a supplement company, not the one I'm working for now. And we were formulating products, and we started working with mushrooms. And so we made a product that contained lion's mane in it. And my background, I'm a registered veterinary technician, and I was in supplement sales, and part of my job was educating veterinarians about the products that I was selling. So I started reading about lion's mane so that I could educate my veterinarians about how to use this new product that we were making. And when I started reading about lion's mane, it mentioned there were some clinical studies about lion's mane's ability to support the regeneration of the myelin sheath. And the myelin sheath is kind of, it covers the spinal cord, and there's a disease in dogs called degenerative myelopathy, where this myelin sheath starts to wear away, and it's called degenerative myelopathy. For short, it's called DM, and it often happens in German Shepherds, Boxers, Corgis, some other breeds of dogs, and it's a very tragic disease. There's no cure for it. The dogs slowly lose the use of their hind legs. And it's just a heartbreaking disease. And because I have a background as a canine rehabilitation practitioner, when I discovered this potential ability of lion's mane to support these dogs with this wasting away of the myelin sheath, I got really excited. And so when the product became available, I passed out samples to pretty much every veterinarian I knew and said, hey, try this product with your degenerative myelopathy dogs. And these DM dogs also happen to be, it usually happens at about 10 to 12 years of age. So these were older dogs. And what happened was these vets, tried it with their patients with this DM disease. And the feedback on the DM was, in some cases it was really helpful, and others it wasn't. That's kind of the nature of this disease. One day it'll be, you'll see a benefit, and the next day not. But pretty much all of them gave me feedback that the pet parents were saying that the dogs were having better cognitive function. A lot of these dogs did have dementia, or the beginning stages of dementia. Some were further along, and suddenly they were able to find the dog door where they couldn't before. They were making direct eye contact with their owners. They were initiating play, picking up toys and initiating play. They weren't vocalizing at night. And I ended up doing a study group with this group of veterinarians so that I could kind of compile this information they were giving back to me about this lion's mane product. And, remember, like, when I gave the product out to them, cognition, dementia, it wasn't even on my radar when I gave the product out to them. Like, I had no preconceived idea that any kind of feedback about this would come back. But virtually all the veterinarians were giving me this feedback. And like I said, it was my gateway mushroom, because I got very excited about it. And I thought, well, if this can happen with lion's mane, what can other mushrooms do? Wow, mushrooms are really cool. And, fast forward to 2.5 years later or longer, and here I am, have fully, I work with mushrooms, 100% now, and have been working with Dr. Silver to, launch this Real Mushrooms pet line. But Sue, for your dog with dementia, that's the long answer. The short answer is lion's mane. I would highly recommend giving your dog the lion's mane. And even though mushrooms usually take, like, the mushrooms are not a quick fix. You need to give mushrooms over a long period of time. They work best when they're given continually. And you usually don't see immediate results. Having said that, with the lion's mane, another interesting thing was that the results were, people were seeing noticeable results relatively quickly. So anyway, I hope that helps, Sue. And lion's mane. So what I think might have happened, Jordan, I know you're back behind the scenes there. I think they might have been having a snowstorm. He might have lost power, is what could have happened. I don't know why Dr. Silver is not coming back, but it could very well be that that they lost. He's in Colorado. They might have lost power at his house. So let's see. So I'm just going to look over the questions. I'm going to keep going. And I'm going to look over the questions that I can answer without him. So Lisa has a question about what is the best way to cook mushrooms before dicing them. Yes, and she's asking shiitake and others you recommend from the grocery store. Well, shiitake is an excellent mushroom to cook. And, one of my favorite ways to cook mushrooms is to just put mushrooms in, like if you're making bone broth, which is wonderful to make for your pet, chicken or beef bone broth, just put the whole, in this case, you wouldn't have to dice it, just put the shiitake, the raw shiitake mushrooms in there and, slow cook them with the bone broth. And then the medicine from the shiitake will get into that bone broth, and you can do it that way. Otherwise, you can just do a little shiitake olive oil. You can saute them in olive oil, and other mushrooms that I have to confess I'm not much of a cook, so that's how I would do it. Other mushrooms from the grocery store, well, you can get lion's mane at the many grocery stores now carry lion's mane. So that, you can slice the lion's mane up into steaks and also just kind of pan fry in olive oil. Even the simple little button mushrooms are very high in ergothioneine, which is a very powerful antioxidant. Portobello mushrooms can also be good. Maitake mushroom, sometimes you can find at the grocery store as well. And as Dr. Silver said before he suddenly disappeared, the general rule of thumb is that any mushroom that's safe for a human is going to be safe for a dog or a cat. One thing I will say about mushrooms, though, is and it's, whenever you're adding any kind of food for your dog or cat, you always want to go slow. It's not just with mushrooms. So don't put a heaping pile of mushrooms in the bowl if your dog has never had mushrooms before. And the same goes for if you're using any kind of mushroom supplement. If it says, if you're cooking, just put a small amount, just put a little spoonful. Make sure that they tolerate it okay. You don't want to cause gastric distress. If you're starting to use the supplements, it might say give a certain amount based on body weight. Well, I would start with 1/4 to 1/2 of that just for the first few days. I like to be really cautious that way. You just, you just don't want to cause any stomach upset. Mushrooms are very safe. The very few dogs have allergies, but sometimes they, and one of my veterinary mentors, a doctor named Dr. Tom Cameron, some of you might know who he is. He used to say to me, Joni, anything can cause anything, and it's true. Like, we get emails sometimes from people, they think their dog had a reaction to the product or this or that. And, most of the, I can't say that's absolutely not the case, because in a rare case, a dog might be allergic to something. For the most part, though, mushrooms are safe for dogs and cats, but you always want to go slow with anything new that you're starting. So I'm going to go on. So Kathy's asking, hi, she's saying, hi from Georgia. Is the real mushroom supplement just as good as feeding actual cooked mushrooms? Well, I would recommend doing both. We're talking about cooking mushrooms, but our supplements are very highly concentrated. It takes an awful lot of mushrooms to actually make our products, like maybe 10 pounds of mushrooms for 1 pound of product. And so for the most part, oh, there he is. Hey, Dr. Silver, I'm glad you're back, and I'm going to just finish this question. Actually, I'm going to pass it along to you, because you are
so well
dabbing away while you've been gone. But Kathy's asking about the real mushroom supplement. Is it just as good as feeding actual cooked mushrooms? And I was talking about how you need so many mushrooms, to make the actual supplement. And, you need to cook a lot.
Well, I think, at question here is the use of the word good.
Yes.
I would much rather have a real mushroom cooked and eat that.
Yes.
That's good eating and good tasting.
That's true.
But if I'm trying to eat it to get the medical benefits, there are more medical benefits in the mushroom as you described, because we take the goodies out, then we put it all back together again, but the goodies are on the outside instead of the inside of the mushroom. So you get the fiber, as we described, being great for the digestion, plus all the active ingredients. But, it's not really a culinary, effort, So, I think it's good to have a daily regimen of a mushroom extract, like real mushrooms, certainly. But I also think it's good to have a daily ingestion of some real mushrooms to get the full value of that whole mushroom. And depending where you are, we're finding a lot of a real cottage industry of mushroom cultivation happening here in Colorado. And I'm not talking about psilocybin, which just passed, but where we can get to the supermarket more than just the white button mushrooms, which also have quite good medicinal value. But we can get the shiitake, we can get the lion's mane.
Maitake, yeah.
Well, I haven't seen much maitake. Once we got some maitake. Oyster is more common.
Oyster.
I'm trying to grow oyster right now and shiitake in my basement. I'm going to try that this weekend. I make substrate with wood and straw to do that. Anyway, awesome. I'm digressing.
I'm seeing a lot of king trumpet mushrooms lately too. That seems to be a mushroom that's out there that they're really cultivating a lot for grocery stores. And I'm going to backtrack. I skipped over a question because I was just hoping you'd come back. Lisa was asking.
Where I live, which is kind of rural, we think that there's some sort of a short circuit in our connection, because underground connection, because when it snows like this is not an uncommon finding. So.
I had a feeling. That's what I said. It's snowing. I bet there was some sort of loss of power.
So louder helped. So anyway, look at all those questions. Wow.
I know. So Lisa's asking. She wanted to know what type of glucosamine did you just recommend for IBD and colitis?
It's called NAG, N-Acetyl D-Glucosamine. Maybe Jordan can spell that out and put that as a banner across the bottom. I'll put it on your Slack, Jordan, just so you have the correct spelling, okay?
And then Michael saw us in Albany. Yay. I remember you, Michael. It's nice to see you on here. Somebody's asking, if the dosage for turkey tail for my dog is 2 capsules per day, is it best to divide the dose or give both at once? And this person feeds twice daily.
It shouldn't matter whether you give it once or twice daily, but if you're trying to give a pretty substantial dosage and your dog is not, the kind of dog that will accept anything that you give them in any amount, then dividing it into 2 or even 3 administrations may enable it to get into the dog better.
Okay, awesome. Lisa says they already takes 5 Defenders and the Hemp RX. It sounds like from getting it from her integrative oncologist. Fantastic. So Janelle cooks the shiitake. I was talking about how to putting the shiitake in the bone broth.
Okay.
And, so
you can't overcook them.
You can't overcook them. You really can't. It's just gonna be releasing more and more medicine into that broth.
Soup is really the best way, I think, to get mushrooms.
Yeah. And then, yes, I agree. And then Colleen is I think it's because we were talking about the seizures. She's saying her dog has seizures, is on the THC-free CBD lion's mane and a good fresh diet and a low glycemic diet. That's great.
That's good. Is that helping? Is that all helping, Colleen? I guess we're not really interactive here.
Yeah. It's hard.
I hope it's helping.
And Debbie is asking about lion's mane for dementia. While you were gone, I waxed poetic about lion's mane and dementia and talked about
as you do, yes.
As I do. I can't help myself. And based on the time that she asked the question, I'm just going to assume that, Debbie, that you heard that, and I'm gonna pass over this. But yes, the short answer is yes, lion's mane for dementia. The long answer, listen to the recording and fast forward it if I go on too long about it.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we could say across the blanket lion's mane is going to help all dogs with all kinds of dementia,
Right.
but it certainly seems that it's definitely worth a try.
Yeah, and reishi too, right?
Yes,
So I didn't mention reishi and tremella. There are other mushrooms too that could be potentially beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Kelly, I'm sorry, I don't remember what dog she's saying she's on Kepper for EPI, but we shared some info that she's thanking us for. Sorry, Kelly, we've gone way past the question though.
I was just saying, I was hopeful that that was one of the first questions. I was hopeful that she'd seen her vet and we're doing something.
Oh, okay.
But sometimes, even when we do everything right and we put them on all the right meds, they still have these breakthrough seizures. This is a very severe form of epilepsy, very difficult to treat. And that's where you need to bring everything out that you can, including the kitchen sink and your mushrooms and your CBD and CBG possibly too.
Thank you for remembering her question, Rom. You must be taking your lion's mane. Because
no, I actually had a nap. I had a nap this afternoon.
Oh, there we go. It's the nap. The nap did it. Okay. Pia's mentioning degenerative myelopathy equals ALS. Yes, correct. That's right. So Lisa's asking, if I wanted to switch from the real mushroom pet capsules to the real mushroom human powders, what is the proper dosage of the powder for a 35 to 40 pound dog?
Well, so I would say probably a half a teaspoon per day for a, for maintenance and wellness. The way I've worked up dosing with the mushrooms, is that it's not just a matter of by weight. It's also a matter of the severity of the condition, because higher doses of the mushrooms can be more effective if you have a more serious condition. Like if you're talking about addressing cancer, you'd probably want to use a pretty high amount.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's nice about the mushrooms from real mushrooms, mushroom extracts from real mushrooms, is that they're all standardized. And you can pretty much predict that the beta-glucan content from one type of mushroom batch to another type of mushroom batch, whether it's in capsules or in powder, or we've put it into our little soft chews and we're coming up with a new powder formula that will be the same thing, we can always know there is that beta-glucan content. So I figured out how to dose them based on that beta-glucan content. And, for instance, with wellness, you might want to use maybe just 1 milligram per pound of beta-glucan per day. But for something as serious as cancer, you might want to use 10 milligrams per pound per day. So I hope that helps.
Great answer, Dr. Rob. This person is saying, I hate when it just says Facebook user because I can't say the person's name. My best friend admits her cognitive decline 14-year-old dog is still alive because of the use of real mushrooms lion's mane. Yes. Well, we're happy to hear that. Debbie's asking how long before the lion's mane works for dementia on average.
Why don't you tell us, Debbie, once you find out?
I find out. I mean, I did say before you came on that like the people, even though mushrooms it's not a quick fix, and it does take, you have to be patient with mushrooms. That they work better over the long term. That I did get some feedback about lion's mane, people seeing results somewhat more rapidly, although there could be a little bit of a placebo effect in there too.
Different types of dementia, different
Yeah.
dosages are being used, because I don't think there's standardization out there of how much they're using. Generally my experience with anything that's natural is 2 weeks. as far as kind of just give it 2 weeks and then take a peek at it, whether it's CBD, whether it's mushrooms, whether it's glucosamine. Now, glucosamine we know takes longer than that, but, something like maybe Boswellia for arthritic pain or something along those lines. So I would say, and I guess maybe you're asking the question because you're not seeing results and you're wondering how long it's going to take to see the results. And if that's the case, I would just say stick with it. Perhaps look at the dosage and give a slightly higher dosage based on my recommendations as far as looking at weight and looking at severity of condition, and try it that way.
Yeah. Thanks, Rob. Sue is asking, is it okay to open the capsules and sprinkle the powder on my dog's food?
Yes, but some of the capsules, especially the ones that are from reishi, contain powder that's very, very bitter. That's because the reishi has these really strong terpenes in them they're strong, but they're also strong tasting. So depending on your dog, maybe that bitterness wouldn't matter, and then again, maybe it would. But other than that, and most of the other mushrooms are pretty palatable. I think chaga, turkey tail, and reishi are probably the big three that are problematic. Reishi at the top, maybe chaga middle, and then turkey tail below. They have some bitterness and some sourness to them. But find out if it's okay, if your dog will take that. Because if it will, it's okay to open them.
Yeah, absolutely. Do dry shiitake work equally as well as fresh?
Well, mushrooms are 90% water. So when you have a dried mushroom, it actually has a concentrated amount of stuff. It's not going to spoil. It's got a very long shelf life. Traditionally, dried mushrooms are how most people have used them medicinally, and in Asian cultures really is the way that mushrooms are kept in the cupboard prior to cooking. You need to soak them. 24 hours really is ideal before cooking them. So you have to be prepared, to soak them the night before because you're going to cook them for the next night's dinner. But no, they're great, and you can boil them and you can cook them, and once they've been rehydrated.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Christy is asking, in your 5 Defenders mix, it only gives the total milligrams of mushrooms in the mix, but doesn't say how many milligrams of each mushroom is in the mix. Are they each 20% of the mix, or are their proportions different?
The 5 Defenders mix. Now, what are you referring to? Are capsules or are powders? Or are the 5 Defenders that's in the immune chews?
I think it's just the 5 Defenders. I would imagine the 5 Defenders in general, what ratio of each mushroom is in the mix.
It's not an exact ratio. I don't have that in front of me off the top of my head. I believe we have a little more turkey tail in there. I think the turkey tails, I think we have a little more turkey tail, but they're fairly close.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Let's see. Thank you. Thank you, Jordan, for listing the N-Acetyl Glucosamine. Helen's asking, which mushrooms would you recommend for a dog with lymphoma? Can they have multiple types of mushrooms in one day?
I think a multiple mushroom approach is probably a good idea for lymphoma. Lymphoma's complicated. It's cancer of the immune system. So we want to be sure that we tread carefully with how we support the immune system. So looking at a 5 Defenders, which has 5 very well described mushrooms that have been used for cancer historically. It's got the turkey tail in a slightly higher percentage, as we mentioned in the prior question. It's got the reishi, it's got the chaga, it's got the maitake, and it's got the shiitake, all of which have been used for centuries for their ability to address cancer. So I would start with 5 Defenders, and I would probably use a moderate dosage, which for lymphoma would probably be about 3 milligrams of beta glucans for every pound of body weight per day. I would give a little more than wellness, but I wouldn't give a huge amount just because we want to kind of start to tweak the immune system gently because it's out of whack with the cancer. But I think should be a good thing to do.
Yeah, good advice, Dr. Silver. Thank you. Debbie, I think we got your question about how long does it take to see improvement. So moving on to Pia, diabetes insipidus, anything which could help.
I'm not seeing these questions anymore. Where'd they go? Oh, there it is.
Yeah, just scroll down. There's a lot of them.
Yeah, and diabetes insipidus, this is a disease of the pituitary gland. And that's the first time I've heard that question or thought of it. It's a very uncommon condition. I don't know that I could give you an answer. I just don't have enough information. Generally, we treat diabetes insipidus with eye drops that are the hormone that the body is lacking, which is why it can't. And it's not a sugar diabetes; it's a water diabetes, and this means that the body is unable to concentrate the urine and retain water, so it just keeps peeing and peeing and peeing. This very dilute urine. The animal, the human, gets dehydrated. So it's important. It'd be nice to have a natural approach to it, and perhaps there is. I don't know one. I would definitely, use the medication if it's working for you.
Yeah, I've not known of a natural therapy that helps with diabetes insipidus. Terry, this is a great question. How about the fading eyes of my 10-pound poodle? Makes me think of what Lee was talking about ergothioneine.
So fading eyes, peripheral retinal atrophy, perhaps, is what you're describing. This is a genetically programmed disease in which the retina starts to atrophy and stop working. Again, this is a fairly, not a rare condition in the poodle, but it's not a condition that we typically think of being able to use supplements to reverse that. It's a tragedy.
Yeah. Oh.
It is a tragedy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Good luck with that, Terry. What is Lisa's asking? What is your favorite brand of the NAG, the N-Acetyl Glucosamine?
I don't know. I don't really. I look for the ingredient, but then I try to look for information from the company and on the product that give me a sense of confidence in it. I generally use human products. I don't think there's a specific NAG, although you might find NAG in some dog formulas. I did a dog formula with NAG in it for RX vitamins. I would just, look for that. A dosage, it's not that expensive. I would probably give, what size did you say the dog was? 40 pounds.
40 pounds.
I'd probably give 250 milligrams twice daily of that.
Okay.
It's just shooting from the hip. I don't know if that's a book dosage.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Silver. Kathy's asking, my vet put my dog who has skin melanoma on Vet Classic CAS Options mushroom supplement. Oh, do we want to do mushroom comparisons here with product?
Well, we don't really want to get into that deal. That CAS Options was created by one of my best friends, the vet who introduced me to mushrooms 25 years ago.
Yeah.
We did a recent study kind of comparing the beta-glucan content of mushroom products that were either grown as mushrooms or were mycelium grown on grain. But we blinded the results of that. And so there are some products out there that don't have that aren't from the mushroom itself. But we don't really want to get into product wars here. So
yeah. What mushroom would you? April's asking, what mushroom would you recommend for kidney failure?
Cordyceps. Period. No question. No doubt.
Absolutely.
Good studies showing that it really does benefit the kidneys directly, as well as hundreds of years of historical use of the cordyceps mushroom in Chinese herbal formulas for diminishing kidney function. So yeah, cordyceps. And the nice thing about cordyceps is it's very tasty, and Cats, 85% more likely than dogs to have chronic kidney disease. Maybe that's a better word to use than kidney failure. I mean, if you're talking about end-stage kidney failure, cat on the way, dog or cat on the way out, I'm not sure anything can help. But if you can catch them in the early stages of the disease, you can really make a big difference. And mushrooms are certainly one part of that. Another part of that is to be aware of certainly the diet. We don't want to feed too much phosphorus, but it's hard to get away from phosphorus because phosphorus is in DNA. It's everywhere. So they make what they call phosphate binders, something like aluminum hydroxide that you can mix in with the food that prevents a lot of the dietary phosphorus from getting into the system. Phosphorus appears to be the mineral that drives the progression of chronic kidney disease.
Yeah.
Vitamin D is also very important for chronic kidney disease. And mushrooms do contain, mushrooms that have been activated by ultraviolet light, they will contain vitamin D2, which can also be helpful for kidneys. So maybe irradiate your cordyceps with ultraviolet light and just take that. Maybe that would be.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, what a great idea to make.
That is a great idea, isn't it? I love it. I love it.
Yeah. We'll work on that.
Yeah. So Lisa, it's okay. You can ask more questions, Lisa. She's got another one. She's asking if it's okay to steam or boil mushrooms to feed before dicing, or would that destroy some of the nutritional properties?
You can do it any way you want. You know, I cook a lot. I think I would have trouble cutting up a slimy mushroom. I'm sure I would get more cuts on my fingers. My fingers are riddled with scars from, from all the knife cuts from cooking. And I had to stop drinking wine when I was cooking for that very reason. I figured it contributed to it. Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
Okay.
So we're getting, let's see, well, we still got a few minutes left. So Eva has just popped in and she said, we were talking about psychedelic mushrooms currently being used for depression. She's read a few articles and new studies. So do you want to talk a little bit about psilocybin and veterinary medicine?
We don't have any written or verbal objective observations of dogs on psilocybin. It's very encouraging what we're seeing with its use in laboratory animals and humans, especially, and certainly, we've seen some specials on Netflix, like How to Change Your Mind, for instance, that is very compelling. I have a dog who has bad PTSD, and I'm in Colorado. I grow psilocybin in my basement. So I'm going to try it with him at some point in time. And who's better than a veterinarian owner to try that on his pet? That's the burden that vets pets have, is they get to be our guinea pigs too. But when I do that, I'm going to report on it because, no one has any experience with it. I'm going to do that. I'm going to get some experience.
And you're talking about very small doses of.
Well, there's something called Clark's Law in herbal medicine, which is how we know how to dose children. Because we take the dose of the dose given to an adult, standard 70 kilogram adult, and then we take the weight of the child and make a fraction and then multiply the dose by that. So we use that same basic principle when we're trying to apply the dosage of something. We don't know what the dosage is, but we do know the dosage for humans, in a dog. So I know basically what the potency is of these mushrooms through personal experience. So from that, I'm going to give a dosage that would be comparable for his weight, that for me would be a very, very, like almost a microdose.
Yeah. And I just want to add that, Dr. Silver, you're not there are vets out. This is actually a question or a topic that's getting a lot of interest in the veterinary world right now. There are other veterinarians that are also interested in this and doing this, based on a lot of, based on what's happening on the human side of things with PTSD, et cetera. And so I would, would you agree that maybe within the next decade, we are going to be seeing psilocybin in veterinary medicine?
If it helps, I'm sure.
If it helps. Yeah. Yeah.
I think the legal issue, just as with THC, is still present.
Right.
We're seeing a little more acceleration of the legal issue here with things in Oregon and Washington State and here in Colorado. Hopefully, it will catch on with other states as well. But we've got a very diverse nation with a lot of opinions about things like psilocybin that aren't always positive.
Yeah, well, this is true.
Mm.
So in the few minutes, we're almost out of time, but let's move on to Sue. Said her first products came yesterday, Mushroom Immune, I imagine Mushroom Immune Chews and Lion's Mane. I started my dog on a low dose of the Mushroom Immune this morning and will start her on low dose of the Lion's Mane tomorrow evening. I also got Lion's Mane and 5 Defenders for myself. Very excited to feed these supplements. Go Sue.
Go Sue.
Mushrooms for the whole family. I love it. Kathy's asking, is there a difference in giving the human 5 Defenders powder to my dogs versus the actual dog 5 Defender supplement? By the way, I take 5 Defenders and Lion's Mane for myself. Go Kathy.
No, Kathy, there's no difference in the 5 Defenders powder versus the 5 Defenders that are in the capsules. We're looking at relabeling or creating pouches that are labeled for, so you have a better idea of how to dose the powders. We would label them for large dogs and possibly for horses. But that's coming, that's in the future. But yeah, there's no reason why you can't use what you're using for yourself with your dog if they will accept the powder. That they won't. That's why we have capsules.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And our final question from Lisa, which is not a mushroom question, but I'm actually curious what Dr. Silver is going to say about this. What are your thoughts on fecal transplants?
Well, I just attended a 2-day workshop put on by the Purina Institute on the microbiome. And the advances in fecal transplants are really wonderful how they're going. And so a lot of work's being done at the university level with fecal transplants, teaching hospitals and the specialists. So I think that, what we can see so far from the value of fecal transplants is that, especially for these nasty diseases that use nasty drugs to control them, I think they're a very good choice. There's 1 or 2 companies that are coming out now with freeze-dried feces in capsules to kind of make it more simple. And I think that, going the oral route is maybe not quite as effective as going through the retention enema approach. It's not a fun thing either way. But I think that, the oral route could be helpful. I know some vets that were early adopters of fecal transplant that would actually put real, wet feces inside of capsules and then put capsules inside a piece of meat. So, and the dogs eat poop, they don't care. And the dogs would ingest it. And then I have heard anecdotally very good results just from doing that. Now, of course, they tested the stool of the donors and made sure and so they were very, very clean donors in that regards.
Yeah, don't do this at home without without some sort of vets.
Some of the studies they're showing, which aren't, and there are some starting to come out in dogs, is that they are, in some cases, they're able to get them, if they've got ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease, they actually are able to get them off of their medication with it. So I think it's very promising. And I think it also tells us that the population of bugs in the bowel is so diverse that using a commercial probiotic is probably just not enough.
Yeah, no, it's true. No, I've heard some.
Good, but for those things that it's not enough, then that's where we go to fecal transplant.
I have a few veterinary friends who just swear by the fecal transplants and have been using them again since inception. Have been using them, and it's just it's getting more easier and easier. And I'm glad you attended that lecture.
It's a little messy, but if it works.
Yes. Yeah. There you go. So, that's our time is up, Dr. Silver. That went by.
Especially hiatus.
I know. Yeah. I was like,
thanks for coming in for me, Joni. I appreciate it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I was just like talking. And just
Joni's an expert.
He'll be back.
You guys are out there listening. You really, I hope you appreciate not just my expertise, which is okay. Joni is an amazing partner to work with. She's so knowledgeable.
I'm like a mushroom cheerleader. I feel like you're like this. You're so good with the science, and I'm just like, mushrooms are cool. Take
No,
mushrooms.
I'm the nerd. You're the enthusiast. You know,
This is true.
it's
This
just
is true.
not a bad team.
Not a bad combo.
And of course, and how would we characterize Jordan? Jordan
God.
is our base. Jordan is our stable
Awesome.
stability, because
Yes.
because Joni and I will just go off onto.
We'd be off the rails without Jordan.
Yes, thank you, Jordan, for
Yeah.
all the good stuff you've done tonight for everybody.
Yeah, and thanks for finally showing your face. So until next month, the last Thursday of every month, we're here. Although, of course, because of Thanksgiving, we did it a week earlier. But and maybe in December we might have to switch things around for holidays. So
pray for not snow, because it's the snow on the ground that messes up my internet.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and I don't want to talk alone again.
Again, you know.
Definitely. So yeah, so we'll post in the Real Mushrooms for Pets page and on the regular Real Mushrooms page when we have the date for our next Q&A, because it might be slightly different for December as well.
Mm-hmm.
And until next time, y'all take care and eat your mushrooms, feed your pets your mushrooms, think about mushrooms, talk about mushrooms, watch mushroom movies, wear mushroom clothing. My mushroom, wear a mushroom necklace. And thank you, Dr. Silver.
Great turnout tonight.
Pleasure. Okay.
We'll see y'all.
Take care.